record. And we'll get started. Alrighty. Great question. Are you happy to be here? I hope you are. I'm certainly happy that you're here. As I said, this is something that I guess I've been guided to do. It's certainly something I wish had been around in 2011 when I was thrown into leading virtually all of a sudden, because we really were thrown in the deep end, much like many of the leaders are today. So if there'd been something like this around at that time, I certainly would have jumped on it. So very happy that you're here and sharing this with me. How are you feeling at the moment? I just wanted to, I guess, check in. There's a lot going on for a lot of people, and I just want to, check in, see how you're feeling, not just at a personal level, but at a professional level. As a leader, how are you going? If you had one word to describe that, pop that in the chat. Thank you. Balanced, excited. Excellent. Oh. But I'm sure you're feeling something. There's so much going on. Excellent. Thank you. So, why are we here? We're here to learn about leading virtually. And I took the time, actually, just out of interest, to look up the definition. And it kind of got me thinking a little bit. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, virtual is defined as made to appear to exist by the use of computer software. And leader, no surprise, is a person who leads a group of people, especially the head of a country and organisation. So when you think about, when you put those together, well, this is how I came up with, this is how it all has actually worked in my head. When you put that together, a virtual leader is a person who leads a group of people made to appear to exist as a team through the use of technology. I'm just going to say that again. A virtual leader is a person who leads a group of people made to appear to exist as a team by the use of technology. I just want to let that sink in a little bit, because it really, I guess, hit home the challenges that you have as a virtual leader. If you've been thrown in to the deep end and are leading virtually now, what would you say your biggest challenge is at the moment? And again, just feel free to pop that in to the chat and share. There's always been a great need for effective leaders who know how to lead themselves before they can lead others. But now more than ever, it's critical. So I remember brilliant. Both of those are spot on. And real. They're real challenges in a virtual world. when I was, as I said, back in 2011, it was the January in 2011, and it was the Brisbane floods, as I'm sure some of you would remember. And it was a time when a lot of Queenslanders, not just Brisbane, were actually experiencing the worst natural disasters of their time. And Brisbane in particular was experiencing a 1 in 100 years flood. And it was quite surreal when the business continuity plan was enforced and we were all sent home to work from home. And at the time, I was actually leading what you would call a flexible work team. So there was a mix of people that worked from the office, co-located in the office, and those that worked from home. But you would rotate. So you would work from home maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and then in the office the rest of the week. And to be perfectly honest, when I first, this was first drawn on us and we were sent home to lead our teams and continue working from home for an indefinite time, I actually didn't think it would be all that different. I didn't really think it would be a big deal. But I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. Because we weren't just dealing with motivating a team. We were all personally affected in one way or another. For me included, both my two young children, it was school holidays. So they were actually staying with my sister and my parents, and my whole sister's family and my parents and my 2 girls had to actually be evacuated from her home. And I couldn't get to them, they couldn't get to me because all the roads were cut off. And there wasn't one person in my team that wasn't impacted in some way. They either knew someone who was directly impacted or they were directly impacted by what was happening outside of us. And so, as you can imagine, very similar circumstances to what we're experiencing today. There was things outside our control that were impacting us personally, as well as having to adjust to working from home in a virtual environment. So as a leader, you're not just trying to lead your team through the change at work, you're actually having to lead them through dealing with the constant bombardment of external images and messages of what's going on around the world. You're taking them through a change curve at multiple levels, which is very complex and very difficult and very challenging. But what I learned through that time was there were probably 3 key areas I needed to focus on as a leader. And they're the 3 key things I wanted to go through with you guys tonight. And the first one's your mindset. So you can see I love definitions. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, your mindset is a set of attitudes or fixed ideas that someone has and that are often difficult to change. Now, quite often in a business context, when people talk about mindset, the first thing that probably comes to mind, and potentially the first thing that comes to mind for you, is the growth versus fixed mindset, made famous by the work that Carol Dweck did. Now, I'm not dismissing the validity of that concept. It's a very real concept, and in fact, there's many more I guess, predispositions of mindset out there aside from the fixed and growth. There is the learning performance mindset, which so essentially there's 4 different categories of mindset which are predispositioned to probably sway towards. And this is where, the theory and the studies have kind of categorized at quite a high level where your thinking kind of sits. So you have the growth and the fixed mindset. You've got a learning and performance mindset. So learning, as you can predict, is motivated towards increasing their skill set and competency in areas of interest. Whereas performance is really focused on recognition and reward of the activities that you do. There's also a deliberative and implemental mindset. So deliberative is a mindset of very conscious thought. someone who's quite open to looking at new opportunities and possibilities, perspectives and new information to try and gain the optimal, I guess, pathway towards what they're trying to achieve. Whereas the implemental, as you can imagine, is very focused on implementing. What's the decision? What's the change? Let's implement it. Let's just do it. Which could kind of, you could say, could close you off to new information and other opportunities. And then the fourth one that is spoken about in the research is promotion and prevention. So promotion is a mindset where you're very focused on winning, gaining at no cost, and at all costs. And then you have the prevention, which is someone who's very risk averse. So they're very concerned about, losing control, or they avoid loss of anything. They're very concerned about losses, etc. So they have a very risk averse mindset. Now, I'm not dismissing these mindsets because they are important. And just going through and explaining each of those, I'm sure you can see how some of those would be far more beneficial in a virtual environment than others, especially when you've been thrown into it in completely unexpected circumstances. But the mindset that I really want to talk about tonight, and it's the mindset I do a lot of work with in my coaching, and it's around those beliefs and those attitudes. So I always say to my clients that your mindset sets your intention, and your intention directs your attention. So where is your attention at the moment? I could probably hazard a guess that your attention is focused wherever the loudest noise is, wherever the next fire needs to be put out. I could be wrong. I'm going to hazard a guess in the current environment. That's probably where your attention is. It's just jumping from one loud noise to the next loud noise to the next fire. And that's not going to help you or your team in the long run, because you've got no clear control over where you're holding your attention. The other thing about mindset, as the definition states, it's a set of attitudes and fixed ideas. So what this means is that your mindset and your beliefs actually determine the way you handle different situations, including your behaviours and your actions and the way you make decisions. So if you don't have a real clear understanding of where your mindset is at, then you're making decisions and you're behaving in ways that you're not even consciously aware of. Now, to explain that a little bit deeper, the science and the research, so Dr. Joseph Dispenza, him and his team have been researching the brain for a long time, and the mind and how it works. And they have actually found through the studies that we actually spend 95% of our time reacting from our subconscious, which is where all our attitudes and our ideas and our beliefs and our habits are stored, essentially. And only 5% of our time is spent through consciously thinking and reacting to or responding, I should say, to our environment. So if we're relying heavily on those sets of beliefs and ideas in our subconscious to determine how we're going to react to what's going on around us in this virtual environment, then we're actually kind of relying on some pretty old data. And we're not allowing ourselves to open our mind to understand where our head actually needs to be. Because it is a very, very different world than what we're used to, which requires us to stop, consciously take check of where our mind is, and then determine where it needs to be. To give you some practical examples, when you're when you are used to leading in an office environment, you've got a set of beliefs and ideas around how you effectively lead your team. And it works in that environment. You have different tools at your availability. You have your people co-located, sitting around you. You have access to them on a regular basis, daily basis. So you have an idea of how you lead your team and what works and what doesn't work. But when you change that environment and you take that same mindset into that new environment, you're probably going to find the things that used to work aren't going to work anymore. So you've got to shift gears and be open to understanding what needs to change, how do you need to approach it differently, and where does your mindset need to be to achieve that? Which brings us to your skill set. So when you're leading an virtual team, what you're going to find is that one of two things. You're either going to have existing skills that need to be amplified and ramped up. 100%, 200%. Probably how it feels like at the moment. And then there might be other skills that are completely new. And, you know, for me, a really good example was technology back then. I wasn't always the most technological minded person, but when you're working in a virtual environment, as per the definition, it's through the use of technology and different types of technology to replicate how you would perform certain activities in a physical environment. So you need to start looking at what your current skill set is and identify those areas that are really going to need to be ramped up over the next weeks to help support your team. And there's a lot of research around what's the most effective skill set needed to lead virtual teams. And I'm not going to touch on everything, but I am going to touch on the things that I think are the most important and most critical things that you probably need to be focusing on right now. The number one is actually redesigning and understanding your team's framework. Because what worked in a physical environment isn't going to work in a virtual world. Or it may need reinstating. So you need to go back to the basics. You need to go back to Leadership 101 and you need to reset your vision and your purpose. You need to remind your team the good they're doing and why they're getting up every day, hopefully getting out of their pajamas and getting to work every day outside of the paycheck. The really important thing you need to do is you actually need to revisit the expectations, the team's values, and agree on how you're going to work in the virtual world. There's a set of rules that all teams work by. And those rules are going to change in a virtual world because you are removing one of the biggest important elements of communication. Is it 70 to 80% of communication is through the visual, and you're losing that. And even if you do have everyone open up on Zoom or Skype and you can see their heads and their faces, you're still missing the majority of their body and their body language. So that is a game changer. You need to reset expectations, team values, and agree on your way of work. How are you going to communicate with each other while you're working virtually? How often are you going to touch base? What type of meetings are you going to be holding? How regularly? And we'll get further into this, but this comes into accountability, social connection. You need to find ways to be touching base with your team regularly so that you can lead them effectively through that virtual environment. which brings me to accountability. You need to accelerate accountability. People, when they are in a physical environment, have this psychological connection to, I'm being watched. People can see me. I need to be working. How easy is it when you're working from home to get demotivated? No one can see me. I'm just going to put some washing on, or I'm just going to do this, I'm just going to do that. If you don't have a very effective and efficient way of tracking people's work, it's very easy for people to kind of, and not because they're trying to, undermine you or the organisation, but it's just human behaviour. So how are you going to accelerate accountability? You need to be super, super clear on roles and responsibilities in a virtual world. What is everyone accountable for? What are they responsible for? Be very, very clear on what success looks like, more than ever before, because you can't demonstrate it. You can't necessarily, show them how someone else is doing something as easily as you can in a physical environment. So what does success look like? And what are the timeframes that you expect them to have it done in? And then how are you going to check in? Is it a daily meeting? 15 minutes every morning. Where are you at? What did you achieve? What didn't you achieve? What are you looking at today? Or is it every second day? But you need to work through how you're going to lead that and manage that with the team. In a virtual team, you need to emphasize responsiveness. And again, what I mean by that is you're not visible. Your team aren't visible. It's not like they can see you sitting at your desk, so they just pop over, tap you on the shoulder and ask you a quick question. Again, behaviourally, in a virtual world, people are less likely to reach out because they don't know if you're on a call, if you're busy, if you're doing something. They don't want to interrupt you because they know you're super, super busy with everything that's going on, or the changes at work, or the policy changes, or the tech changes, or they know how busy you are. They're not going to reach out. So you need to work with your team and agree on what type of messages or questions or help are going to be sent through what types of medium of communication, and then what's the response time on that? If they text you, how quickly will you respond to them? If it's a phone call, if it's email, if it's Skype message. So you need to agree with them, or at least set expectations with them around how to contact each other and what the expected response time is. Creating connection is a super, super important one. So connection is a basic, fundamental human need. We need to feel that we belong. Now, I can imagine that all of you are probably already starting to feel lonely or isolated, even though you might have your family around you. But everyone's world's been turned upside down and we're just not living life the way we used to. You need to find ways that you can keep your team connected. And again, that's going to be through the use of technology, and it's going to be through frameworks and structure that we talked about earlier. But don't forget social connection, and don't underestimate the importance of the water cooler talk, yeah? The number of times that you're in the kitchen making a cup of coffee or heating your lunch and you just start chatting with someone. And it starts off as a social connection, but then it gets into work and ideas are raised. And so how can you replicate that? Are you having virtual morning teas? Are you, I actually know my son-in-law, they are still having their morning tea and afternoon tea together. So they go and get it from the kitchen and they come back and they log on and they sit there and they literally eat morning tea and they have a cup of tea and chat, which is perfect because they're replicating that social connection that was happening in the office. So how can you do that? Intensifying communication. but it's got to be strategic. So communication is hard enough when you're physically there, because people will filter information through their own experiences, through their own perceptions. You've now lost 70 to 80% of key communication, the visual, and now you need to be communicating incredibly important messages to your team. So you need to be very strategic about your communication. What type of communication are you going to send through what sort of medium? Two things that are really important with communication with a virtual team is one, repetition. They're not going to get it the first time, especially with all of this other noise and all of this, the change curve that they're going on and the journey that they're going on emotionally. They're not going to get the message the first time. So you will need to repeat yourself succinctly and clearly, but you're going to need to give them the same message more than once, possibly even 3 or 4 times, depending on what the message is and how important it is that they understand it. The other thing about communication in a virtual environment is you need to keep the side conversations to a minimum. And the reason for that is because people start to feel left out. They'll start to feel like they're not good enough, and why is such and such having so many conversations? And as ridiculous as it might sound, it's amplified in a virtual world because they can't overhear what you're saying. They can't see your body language when you're talking to Joe in the desk next to them. So you need to try and keep those side conversations to an absolute minimum, so that you can ensure your team retain trust, there's transparency, and they can see and aware of a level of fairness within the team. 2 more I want to touch on. One is motivation. Now, quite often we tend to assume that most people's motivation or drivers is money. And for many people it is. But they're not, but money isn't. We know money is not the only motivator. I have always had, every team I have ever led, I have always had a number of people whose main motivator has been recognition and reward. So don't assume that because your people are no longer sitting co-located, that everybody's going to continue to thank each other and recognise something that somebody's done. You're going to have to amplify that. You're going to have to get really clear on what your team's drivers are, what motivates each of your individual team members, and you're going to have to amplify the feeding of that to make sure that they're getting that motivation and they're getting that drive. It's very easy in a virtual environment, out of sight, out of mind. I've got this work I've got to do, I'm just going to do it. Hey, can you help me? Thanks. But as you know, people who thrive off reward need more than a thanks. They need to quite often be publicly rewarded. So how can you incorporate those motivations into the new structure and framework and how your team is going to run? Lastly, technology. As per the definition, you're creating this appearance of a team through the use of technology. So technology is crucial, and your use of it, your effective use of it, is crucial. So, there's not going to be one case fits all. You need to understand what's going to be the most effective technology to replicate what would normally happen in a physical environment. Now, depending on your type of work, you may run workshops that used to be held in a room, facilitated with someone standing up the front. You had whiteboards, maybe a projector. You need to be able to replicate that through technology. You probably had people voting. Again, what's the right technology that can replicate that? Morning teas, social interactions, strategy sessions, reward and recognition presentations. What are the best forms of technology to support those? Now, depending on your organisation, you will have some technology already to support you, but you may not have everything you need. The social interactions, for example, there might be an app that you can download that is going to be more effective than the corporate software that you have. So you'll need to play around, ask around, and identify different types of technology to suit the different types of objectives that you have for your needs and interactions with your team and stakeholders. There was one that I missed that's really, really important, which when I started talking about technology, I realised, and that's shared leadership. Don't be afraid to empower your people through this time. You can't do it all. You can't be expected to do it all. This is a huge task that you're being asked to do. And when you lead a virtual team, your responsibility, I believe, goes through the roof. Because there is so much more you're now being responsible for. So empower your people, share that leadership, assign them responsibilities, whether, if you've got someone who's tech savvy, ask them to research the different types of apps, etc., that can be best suited for the different forums that you need to create in the team. Get them to share best practice, identify, research and share best practice. But also leverage their strengths. Get them to coach other people, those people that are good at something in particular. Get them to train them on how to, again, it might be the technology, but you don't have to be the one to find the technology and then train everyone how to use it. Use the strengths in your team, empower your team. And it's going to motivate them too, because they're going to feel like they're adding value. Which brings us to focus. So your focus is the thing or the person that people are most interested in. So if I asked you where your focus was at the moment, are you focused on you? Are you focused on your people at the detriment of you? Are you more focused on everything that's going on and happening around the world? Which would be very, very easy to do at the moment. Or are you just still focused on results, just head down, got to make it happen, let's just do it. There's no right or wrong of to which of these 4 areas your focus should be on. In fact, it's interesting because there was a survey of over 60,000 employees on the characteristics of what made a great leader. And so the results of that were that leaders that focused solely and wholly on people were considered to be great leaders 12% of the time. Those leaders that focused wholly and solely on results were seen as great leaders 14% of the time. But leaders who focused on both were considered great leaders, I think, 72% of the time. So a huge jump. And yes, it's important that you focus on your people. And when I say your people, that means you as well as your people. And you also focus on results. But the key for a leader, especially a virtual leader, is getting that balance right and working and understanding what that balance is. And there's no right or wrong answer, because that balance is going to change depending on where your team is at. Now, right now, if I was to guess where you and your teams are at right now, given everything that's going on, my advice is the balance is you and your people first, and most importantly, you. Focus on you first. Because if you're not right, if you're not in a position where you can lead yourself, you're not going to be able to lead your people effectively. So where's your mindset at? Are you setting time aside each day for your own well-being? Have you got clear boundaries at home around what's work time, who's responsible for what, what's home time? Have you got yourself into a routine? When you've got you right, then it's time to focus on your people. Where's their mindset at? Where are they in the change curve? How are they being emotionally impacted by everything that's going on? Do they have the frameworks, the structures, the technology they need to support them through this change and to get their job done? Are they clear on what success looks like now in this new world? And lastly, results. And I'm going to loosely use a quote from Richard Branson. But if you look after your people will look after your customers. And when both your people and your customers are looked after, the results will come. And that's when you can start focusing on results. To quote Eckhart Tolle, the greatest agent for change is awareness. And right now, that is where your focus needs to be, is awareness. And having said that, you can be the most aware person in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, if you don't act on it, then you're not actually going to grow. And right now, it's a time for growth and vulnerability as a leader. And right now, what the world needs more than anything else are leaders that can lead people through change and ambiguity. Leaders that can lead themselves first and then lead others through all this uncertainty. So, could you imagine spending the next 10 weeks with me learning how to effectively lead virtually? Being part of a community that are all going through and experiencing the same thing you are right now. Where could you be in 90 days from now? Imagine having me mentor you through the changes over the next 10 weeks. Having me in your ear every day if you wanted. Each session will be recorded, which means you can listen to it or watch it as often as you like. We know how important our environment is to our success. So imagine being part of a supportive community, learning from each other, learning from me. Where could you be? What could you have achieved in 10 weeks' time? Now, some of you may not be interested, and that's totally okay. But some of you may actually be resonating with this and really wanting to learn more. So what is next? Well, over the next 10 weeks, I'd be working with you on your mindset, your skill set, and your focus. And of course, technology will be interweaved through all of that. And we'll work together, and I'll be mentoring you every week. And I'll be honest, as I said, this is kind of an offshoot of my normal coaching program. I may not and probably won't offer this again. I'm simply doing it because there's a need and a huge gap. And if I had had this when I needed it, I wouldn't have struggled as much as I did. And I would have felt far more supported through the whole process. So we'll work together, working together through this with people who are experiencing exactly what you're experiencing. and going through the same things you're going through, not just physically, but emotionally. So what does it look like? What's included? So it's 10 weeks mentoring with me. There's 3 Q&A sessions. You have access to all of the mentoring sessions via recording. You have access to experience and knowledge of the community, and you'll also get a copy of my ebook, Virtual Leader, which is at the copyright at the moment. So you won't get it until that process is completed, but you'll certainly have it well and truly before the 10 weeks is over. So what's it going to cost? Well, I'd normally probably charge $2.5, something like this. But as I said, I'm doing this to fill a gap and a desperate need that I believe is out there. And I want to help those who are struggling at the moment. So until midnight tomorrow night, I'm offering it for $1,300. So as I said, you may not be interested, and that's totally okay. But if you are, and this resonates with you, then I recommend you make a committed decision. A decision to invest in you. Because if you invest in you, then not only will you benefit from it, but so will your team. I will send the recording of this to you, and along with that, the link. Actually, I can probably put the link in the chat before we say goodnight. I'll just stop sharing. And I'll grab that link for you, and I'll pop it in the chat. Now, when you click on the link, you will see the full price. However, when you go to checkout, it'll be discounted. So don't worry about that. You won't be charged the full price. Okay, there's the link there. So I'll send you a copy of the recording. I will also send you the link with the copy. As I said, you got till midnight tomorrow night. I'm leaving that open for. And essentially, I hope that you have got some great information out of tonight. I want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank you for actually investing the time in you tonight. I know it's Easter Thursday, the start of the long weekend. So I appreciate that you've taken the time to spend that night with me. Have a fabulous Easter, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.